Kylie Pratt arrived at Campbell in January of 1997, and over the course of her 3-year career became the school's first women's golf All-American. In the process, she led the Camels to 3 straight NCAA Regional appearances, 2 Atlantic Sun Conference titles, and a 14th place finish in the '97 NCAA Championship. After graduating in December of '99 with a degree in sport management, Kylie began her coaching career while pursuing her M.Ed. at Campbell. During the 3 seasons she spent on the staff, Campbell won 8 tournaments, advanced to NCAA Regional play 3 times, and also won a pair of ASUN titles. She then embarked on a professional career in 2002 and played on the LPGA FUTURES Tour through 2006. From there, she started a career as an LPGA Tour caddie, manager, and also a college recruiting consultant. Now preparing for the upcoming U.S. Women's Open, Kylie's travels have brought her back to Buies Creek on her way to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is the next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with people who've made this place special over the years. I'm delighted today to be joined by Campbell Hall of Fame member and LPGA Tour caddy Kylie Pratt. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Kylie, and thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Stan, wow, thanks for that intro. Can I actually steal those couple of pages? I might actually have to put that on my Instagram. And yeah, actually, just listening to what you said, it's bringing back some memories, and it's hard to believe that, yeah, some of that stuff happened.
Well, I can copy and paste, or I'll just send you the entire document, and you can use what you want with all there.
Yeah, fantastic. I didn't realize the wins. That was probably the one that stood out the most. It kind of tournaments just rolled into tournaments, and yeah, it's nice to hear those numbers.
So, Kylie, let's start back at the beginning. Tell us about growing up in Australia and how you got started in golf.
Yeah, so I have a bit of an interesting background. My parents are sugarcane farmers, so I was basically a country girl. Tractors, trucks, living off the land, took a bus to school 15 minutes away. In fact, we actually had a beach house, and that was about 10 minutes from our regular house. So everything was pretty close together, but our main city was a good 45-minute drive away. Dad had actually carved out a tennis court in the backyard. A few of you probably know my sister played professional tennis for 20 years, Kylie Pratt. So I think her world ranking at a lowest point got to about 30. So yeah, she had a lot of success, especially for a country person. I grew up playing tennis, traveled up and down my state, had glimpses of good, but just not good enough. And when I had my sister to compare to, at about the age of 14, 15, I realised that that wasn't the path for me. My aunt gave me a set of golf clubs, and basically that's how I got into it. I started hitting golf balls into the cane paddock. Then I realised if I hit them in a certain area, I didn't have to walk as far. And then I actually realised if I hit them on top of Dad's tractor shed, if they hit a certain area, they would collect in one spot. I got in trouble a few times because he came home and I didn't realise it. And obviously this made the loudest noise on the tin shed roof. But I enjoyed it because it was a very small collection area.
That's so interesting because I talked not too long ago with Sarah Begrowitz-Llewellyn, and she got her start in Pennsylvania. She saw Tiger on TV and went out to the garage, found some old rusty clubs. Neither of her parents played. But she went out in the backyard, started hitting golf balls, and her mom says, we got to do something else with this. So they found a driving range and some instruction there, and it started from there too. So how interesting that is. I've never heard the story about hitting balls on top of a tin shed, but it makes sense. So you don't have to go all over to grab them.
Yeah, well, I stopped playing tennis when I was 14 or 15, and then obviously had these set of clubs. So it's just something I enjoyed. Obviously, with the hand-eye coordination, it came easy, but that was just hitting balls. And then some local friends of Mum and Dad, they actually took the time and would take me into Mackay, the 40-minute drive every Sunday for juniors. Now, I was a junior starting golf, and I think I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
So that is grade 11, which in golf is probably pretty late.
Sure.
was able to learn the game properly, like the course management, how to play, not just hitting balls. And then obviously putting and chipping. I was only pitching and hitting kind of the longer irons into the cane paddock, which later on I lost too many balls. My school was 10 minutes away. I got my driver's license and then I actually started hitting balls on the oval.
Oh, wow.
So the teachers would see me after school going down there, dropping the golf balls. And I think becoming more accurate was just based on the fact that I didn't want to walk very far.
Right.
So the smaller the target and the smaller the area you hit it into meant that, I didn't have to do a lot of work collecting the golf balls.
So how far did you have to go to practice chipping and putting?
I couldn't. Basically, that just happened when I would go into town and play the local junior comps. So you'd chip and putt before. Obviously, that turned into maybe going and taking some lessons on the Saturday. But all that came pretty quickly. With tennis and the hand-eye coordination, once I learnt the basics, and I had a very good teacher who took the time to really try and help me. And then it just became about playing and learning as quickly as possible.
So your tennis background, do you feel like that gave you the competitive edge? Have you always been a competitor?
Absolutely. Someone had asked me one day, those philosophical questions, is the glass half full or half empty? And I was like, oh, well, the glass is half full. But they asked why. And I really couldn't give them an answer why. Mm-hmm. I think it was just instilled in me that it was always half full. And Mum and Dad said, you guys can do anything you want. All I need you to do is to practice. If we're going to spend this money and time to take you away to events, and that was more to do with tennis, you have to practice. So that got installed in me at an early age, but I wanted it. I'm sure Coach Crooks might refer to me maybe as the silent assassin. I just had this inner confidence. Mm-hmm. I really didn't have to tell anyone or project it. I just wanted to beat you, but it was in a nice way. But basically, you take your game, I'll take my game, and I think I'm going to come out on top.
Is that what's interesting about golf as opposed to tennis or some other sports where you're actually, in golf, it's you and your ball and the course and the conditions, whereas tennis, you actually have to go, somebody's hitting it back at you.
Yeah, actually, that's great. And when people said, what was the difference moving from tennis to golf? And it was kind of something, what you just said there, where I could play my best tennis and lose, or I could play so-so tennis and win. And that was based on what the competitor was doing. Golf, I just loved because it was the challenge. So if I go and play golf and my score, or I play that golf course in the less amount of strokes, then I win. Mm-hmm. But it's you versus the course, them versus the course. Obviously, there's a few times, when you're coming down the stretch and it just might be the two of you and it turns into a match play situation. But most of the time, it's just the challenge you have against yourself and the golf course, which I really enjoyed.
And you and your playing partners can all play well, and somebody might end up with a better score, but it's not like you've kept them from doing their best.
Yeah, correct. And I was pretty social and probably still am. I can pretty much talk to a brick wall if it would talk back. But that was actually my calming influence. And Coach Crooks he was maybe dumbfounded that I was out there chit-chatting, but what it did for me is it relaxed me. But I also like to learn. I wanted to hear where these other people were from, their stories. But as long as I had that 30 seconds before I hit my shot, that's all I needed to focus. So I used something that could help me to focus on the shot later. And then, we're out there for 4 or 5 hours. So sometimes switching off can be a good thing.
Absolutely. Golf does take a long time and a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, a lot of work at your game. Most golfers have to have a really good work ethic. Growing up on a farm, did you have chores that you had to do from a young age or anything like that could have led to a work ethic or a practice ethic in tennis or golf?
Probably. If Dad needed help, we would always be there to help him. Probably the most important thing that I think I realized is if you're going to do a job, do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that entailed, that could have been, okay, I'm going to practice properly. I think I was reading something where Michael Jordan used to practice as if it was competition. So he was, at an early age or early in his career, he was practicing at that high standard. So, yeah, I think I've used that actually throughout, whether it be golfing, agent, managing, caddying, is if you're going to do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And also find the information, talk to people, find a way to make it happen.
Absolutely. So you would go into town once a week and begin entering tournaments. When did you feel like, hey, I could maybe play college golf or something like that? When did that come around?
Well, I was home. Oh, sorry. My sister came home for Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked at her passport and I saw all these stamps and I thought, wow, that's cool. Where is Czechoslovakia? Where is, obviously we know where Scotland, England and all those were, but she was playing in some really random places.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And I got the bug with golf. I wanted to get better. But actually when I finished high school, I went to university at the University of Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
So our education or tertiary education system in Australia is very like the English system, where maybe only 8% of Australians get to go to university. It's very high level academic. So not only do you have to apply to the school, but you have to apply to the degree you go into. So I was studying information technology systems, which is lower level computer programming, and then you can go into various other areas. But I still had the golf bug. I learned very quickly the first 6 months that I couldn't combine my golf and my studies. Mm-hmm. It was very difficult, just with the academic workload. So I finished out the year, spoke to my parents and went, I still love golf. I still want to get an education, purely even as a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't realize how good I could play golf or become. And to this day, it still, floors me that I've accomplished some of the things I did, but I was always looking forward. So finished the year at the University of Queensland, went back to my hometown, had the support of my golf club, started playing all the local comps. I was working part-time at a restaurant, so that afforded me the chance to work nights and I could play golf and practice during the day. So after a few months, my handicap got down on a stroke average, and then I started riding away to schools. So I had done everything myself. It's very hard to find the information, or back then it was. Mm-hmm. Now everything's obviously online. So there was this book, I think it was the Ping College Golf Guide. And I want to say it had every school in America, Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA junior colleges. And even that, someone like me, I had to translate what that meant. Luckily, a couple of people had gone to college, so I was able to ask them questions and narrowed it down, and basically just started riding away to all these schools. Got a few no's from Chapel Hill, NC State. I kind of picked the climate areas that were very close to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a cold weather person, so I think I looked at schools, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, and further south.
Right.
Just somewhere where I could have the climate to be able to play golf. And then fortunately for me, Campbell, there was a gal from Argentina. I believe her name was Clara. Mm-hmm. And she had left midway through. I think there was some family things. She had to go home. And it basically left what would be maybe a half a scholarship. So talking to Coach Crooks, kind of got everything sorted, asking mum and dad, oh, can you please pay for my flight over? I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to get that full scholarship. And that's kind of how it all started. So there's a story that not many people know is I'm actually getting ready to leave Australia. My sister is playing a tennis tournament at the capital of my state, but I've actually got to fly out of that city. So I'd arranged, I'm going to see mum and dad off, say goodbye, and then I knew I'd be gone for at least a year. talking to them on the phone 2 days before, they turn around and say, oh, you're not going to go. And I've just like let loose. I've probably never been that determined to get something, and I've just told mum and dad, no, I'm going. My sister lives in Florida. She's a 2-hour flight away if anything happens. This is something I want. I've written to all these schools. I've spent a whole year waking up at 3 a.m. to make phone calls to Coach Crooks because of the time difference. So soon enough, they realised, okay, yes, this is something she wants. My sister calmed them down a little bit. And then, basically I was on a flight in January over to cold Buies Creek, North Carolina. And I didn't realise it was going to be that cold for the initial, first couple of weeks. But, that's how it all kind of transpired.
It's so interesting, as we go through in life. And I've always wondered about why people come from literally all over the world to Buies Creek. And as I get older and our children became, high school and then college age, and I see these young people come in here and their parents are allowing them to fly over oceans. And, Australia's half a world away from Buies Creek, basically. And what those parents might be going through. And, and that decision to let them go. And, I'm always touched when they think that this place is a good place for them, and maybe it's because it's a smaller place, and and there's not a lot of going on. We don't get a lot of headlines around here for terrible things happening in this area.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I picked Campbell. Is it was a smaller school. Remember, a year before I'd been to the University of Queensland, and that's 30,000 students. So I think that would be the equivalent to like a University of Michigan. So I was a number. Obviously different things going on. There was no sport attached to our colleges. So my golf would have only been at local clubs and trying to represent the state and trying to do better. So when I did my research, and I'm a very numbers person, so I found out everything I could about Campbell at the time without obviously having the internet that we have today. But when I found out they own their own golf course, the golf course was literally probably a 3-minute drive. I felt like I could be as successful as I wanted to be. And I had the determination myself to do that. I just needed the facilities, the location, and also important for me to have the education behind me. So, arriving here and then seeing everything firsthand, I was pretty excited.
Okay, Kylie, John says you were a 4 handicapper when you came in, and then you finished second in the regional 5 months later. How is that a little bit of a stretch there? But how do you go from that in that quick of a
That's actually
time?
Very accurate. Fortunate that we had a good team. We had a team leader in Mara Larari. I think her stroke average or handicap would have been like 1 over, 2 over. And at the time, that was very good. Yes. I know under par is the score these days, but women's golf has just become so much more competitive. But when I got here, I was a couple of years older. So the first thing they were saying is, you're a freshman, rookie, you've got to, sleep on the cot. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? I just beat you at qualifying. So I kind of went with the flow with a few of the things, but ultimately with our team, all we wanted to do in a good way was beat each other. So it became this very competitive, in a good way, environment. We'd cross fairways at tournaments and just, give each other a nod or a thumbs up, which meant, okay, we were right around par, having a good day, amongst the team. And I want to say we won our first 6 events when I got here. But that was purely because we were just so competitive. And that competitiveness came from us, practicing our 2 to 5 every day. We would play games or we'd actually go out and play. So I think it just installed in all of us to play well. Obviously, with golf, you can have some individual success, but that was never the focus. It was just, okay, get better, play better, and the results will happen. That was a shock to me. I still couldn't believe it. In fact, when we got done, finished second at Regional, I think you were there, if I remember correctly.
Not that time.
You were there? Oh,
not that spring. We had about an 8-month-old daughter in 1997, and unfortunately at that time our staff had not grown to where I could pull away from home baseball, softball, whatever else was going on in the spring.
Actually, now
to go there. Yeah.
Maybe it was Susan Berner. Was she the assistant?
She probably was on our staff and as assistant AD, and she probably traveled.
A couple of supportive members with us, because obviously this is the first time that it happened. I finished second. The team had qualified, and they're actually handing out flags.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they thought they were handing it to me as if I'd won. Mm-hmm. Which the winner gets the flag, and I think maybe a couple of the teams. So mistakenly they gave me one, and I just held on to it. I'm like, I'm not going to let this go. It was our first chance to, go on to nationals, and we were playing some teams that were just kind of the best in the country, and we'd come from nowhere. But like I said, we just kind of wanted to beat ourselves, believed in ourselves, and did all the right things leading up.
And it's an incredible story. John Crooks took over the women's team in the fall of 1991, and he always tells the story of going over to Marshbanks Dining Hall and asking young ladies, do you own a set of golf clubs? Would you like to go on an all-expense-paid trip to Greensboro or wherever the trip was? He was just trying to fill out a team, and then Janet Wooten gets here, Maria Maldonado gets here, and it starts building from there. Your team in 97 has Evelyn Kinlaw, who's from just south of Dunn, North Carolina, and you're from Australia, and Mara and some others from Argentina. So it was all that had converged here, and it's interesting to see how that competitive nature transpired and resulted in all those wins. 6 straight wins. That's never happened again in the program's history. And as you well know, in golf, to win 6 events in a row, whether it's individual or team, is just remarkable, on the day. And that's something that's, we're talking getting on 27 years now.
Yeah.
And that's not happened.
I didn't know that. So, that's kind of interesting to hear. I remember going down to my first tournament was Tulane University. Now, coming from Australia, in my hometown, I think there was 3 girls like my age. So even when I took that year off where I was just playing golf and working, I would go to local opens, and the same happened. I think the 2 or 3 girls my age, a little bit older ladies, 30, 35 playing. But when I showed up at Tulane and maybe there was 10 teams, maybe 10 or 12, mm-hmm. I saw the spectrum of golfers, but we were all in this basically, 18 to 23-year-olds. Mm-hmm. Some better, some worse, some in the middle. But when I saw that group of players on the driving range, I thought, oh, wow, this is what I want. I want the competition. I want to show what I can do or the team can do. So just to see that and that was like pretty motivating. And then knowing that we would do that spring semester, probably another 6 times. I think 6 probably included the conference, and then mm-hmm. everything else was a bonus. Like the regionals was a bonus, nationals. Probably looking back, I didn't realize how much it meant at the time because everything was just running into each other. My first 6 months of college golf, of golf in America, school in America. So it's pretty cool to look back now and reminisce.
What do you remember on course, off course? Some of the highlights, the stories, the things. Some people talk about just being in the van and being together or being around my teammates and my classmates. What are some things that stand out from your undergraduate days, Kylie?
Yeah, van rides are certainly one of them. we would leave maybe Saturday morning. Well, I could probably say it now, but there was a few extracurricular activities that may have taken place on a Friday. So van rides Saturday morning were basically, I just need to sleep for a few hours. But the songs at the time, radio was on. I'm sure coach wanted to listen to what he wanted to listen to, but got overruled by all the seniors. But just like the camaraderie, going on those trips, arriving at the golf courses. Probably that first 6 months was, like I said, probably just a bit of a blur because they just ran into each other and I was just going with the flow of what was happening. Golf standing out, probably it was a couple of years later and we're at the conference tournament. I'm not sure when. I wish I could remember the courses better and who we were playing against, but I do know we were in the TAC at the time,
Trans-America Conference.
Conference. And pretty sure it was the last day. We were maybe only a couple of shots in the lead. But basically it came down to, that last day and a couple of other team members had played really well. But what had happened was I was actually hitting the ball so good. I want to say I hit 17 greens, was hitting it really close, but I ended up with 18 pars.
Wow.
And coaches are looking at me going, what is going on? Like, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, to shoot 18 pars is just very difficult in itself, but you expect to make a couple of birdies. So it's funny, I missed the 8-footers for birdie, but I missed the 1 or 2 8-footers. I made the 1 or 2 8-footers for par.
Right.
But to actually have, 18 pars. So I've never done that ever since. It only happened that once in college, which was a conference tournament.
Wow. The camaraderie is something that has been something that, and the competition is a recurring theme that I hear from talking to, I guess you're now my 20th guest on this podcast, and regardless of the sport, and being in a place like Bowie's Creek, where you kind of have to make your own fun, especially in those days. There wasn't a lot to do outside of the other. Kylie, Coach Crooks has built a program that the numbers are astounding. 160 combined wins between the men's and women's team. 36 postseason appearances on the men's and women's side. In your opinion, what are some of the reasons that he's been so successful here?
Actually, I'm glad you prompted me because you asked me some of the memorable moments. Yeah. And I would actually say, I don't know whether he would say this, but I liked his speeches. He used to give these pretty cool motivational speeches in the van. And it could be something as simple as like, you've worked really hard, you've practiced, you've put in the time. This is I think opportunity was his favorite word. This is your opportunity to show everyone here what you're capable of. Mm-hmm. But I remember one was, it had just rained. I think it was a 36-hole day. We're all wet. But we did the right things. And in the van, we've packed extra pair of socks, extra shirt, even an extra hat. Like your hat gets quite wet and it was a little bit cooler. So now you're cold. But knowing that that was going to happen and him giving us the tips or the advice at the time to, pack all this stuff. So then in between the 36 holes, we're in the van and he's giving that speech. Like, you guys or you girls are the most prepared. Look what you've done. You've come to the course with extra, towel, hat, shirts. You're going to be warm out there. Not all the other teams would think to do this. So just go out there and show them, what you can do, knowing that you've put in the time, you've done the preparation, you've thought of the extra stuff. Now go do it. So I'm totally paraphrasing because his speeches are way better than mine. Even today, like even with the caddying, I can't motivate a player as well as I think he motivated 5 individuals. And even golf is individual and people take things a certain way or interpret it a certain way, but to have 5 different players and kind of give that motivational speech, it's always something I've been a bit envious of. I wish I could do a few speeches like that.
How do you push the buttons for 5
Correct.
different players, and 5 different players from perhaps 3 to 5 different countries.
Absolutely.
And not to mention their family background and what we've learned here over the last quarter century about mental motivation and mental toughness and health and things like that. It's kind of remarkable to me.
Yeah. Well, and even to get back on track with his, accomplishments, that's pretty phenomenal. And he was a very good golfer himself. So the first 6 months I was here, I actually got to play quite a bit with him. And because I was new to golf and maybe he recognized that, he made sure that, he'd at least try and play a round of golf with me and 2 other team members. But remember, he had the men and women's team.
Mm-hmm.
So to take the time to be able to do that, and then obviously still give time and attention to the other team members. But yeah, those numbers are pretty phenomenal. And sometimes people will say, well, you weren't playing against the best teams in the country. To me, it didn't matter. It was still a competition. You still have to win. You still have to hit that 3-pointer on the last, to win by 1. You still have to get it done. So I think that's too why I like the golf side of it better is, you could just go out there and be the best you can be.
Kylie, after you graduated, you accepted an assistant coaching position, worked on your graduate degree. Double question here. What was Coach Crooks like to play for? And then how was he similar or different to coach alongside?
Yeah, it was very different. Basically, golf was new to me. I'd had some success, but I wasn't ready to be a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I had an older sister who was a professional. I remember she was talking to Kylie Webb, who at the time was the number 1 female LPGA golfer from Australia. So Kylie had told her, golf is there forever. So if she's not ready, don't go out and try and play. So when I kind of heard that advice, I thought, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. I'll stay in Campbell. Once again, the backup plan, if golf doesn't work out, I still got the education, and I actually did my master's.
Mm-hmm.
So that was more about also if I couldn't play, I liked the aspect of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
You're a parent, a peer, a coach, a psychologist, a counselor, accountant, possibly travel agent. You had so many different roles, which I really enjoyed. So leaving golf, stepping into that, and coach had been obviously coaching for a while. He knew the people. The transition was easy, but probably didn't get to work on my golf game as much as what I thought. That actually was okay because it happened in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize at the time how much administrative paperwork there was. So that came pretty thick and fast, and then was having to do it for 2 teams.
Sure.
Because obviously it's very vital that coach be out there instilling his knowledge with the team rather than him, focused in the office. And then throw recruiting on top of that. Yeah, it was a lot of work. But once again, everything is a bit of a learning curve. I enjoyed the challenge. Once again, if you're going to do something, do it properly. So, yeah, it was nice to, even after 3 years, take a little bit of a back step with the golf, learn some different areas, and even to what I'm doing today, that totally set me up for the organizational, the detail, get the information, use the information.
Well, Kylie, you've spent time since leaving Campbell and playing as an agent, helping students secure college scholarships. What advice would you give an incoming freshman, at Campbell or anywhere when they're going off to college? What would you say to someone as they're starting out their college career?
Oh, good question. I would say, first of all, wherever it is, pick the right place that's good for you, whether it be based on what you want to study, climate, facilities. I talk about this often when I try and help some Australians. I don't do the recruiting service anymore, but anyone who wants a little bit of advice, happy to offer that up. So it's finding where the fit is for you. But then once you're over here, just what do they say? Grab it by the horns and just run with it. You can be successful anywhere at any school, but it's up to you as the individual. So we can't motivate someone to do better. We can try, but a lot of that comes from, the internal self. But when you're recruiting, you can kind of see glimpses of that in a person. So I want someone who, well, if I was recruiting, I would want someone who has that passion. We can kind of fix some of the other stuff, the mechanics. Sorry, I get rambling. I jump all over the place. But yeah, just basically coming to a school, just embrace it and try and do the best you can.
Our guest today on Tales from the Creek is Campbell Hall of Famer and current LPGA Tour caddy Kylie Pratt. Kylie, golf's not like team sports where organizations draft or sign talent, then develop players and plug them into positions. Tell us about how you went about starting your professional career.
Yeah, so I was still at school. I was just finishing off my master's, and then I applied to go to basically LPGA qualifying school. At that point in time, there was 2 stages. So I want to say the first year I didn't get through, which was okay because that enabled me to play on the secondary tour at the time, which was called the FUTURES Tour. Now it's called the ASUN Tour, and it basically is a pathway to the LPGA. Back when I was playing, no spots were offered, and then they had a partnership, or LPGA has since bought out that secondary tour, and there is a direct pathway. If you finish at the time, or a year after I was there, I think the top 3 got to go, top 5. These days it's top 10. So yeah, I got my full FUTURES Tour card. I finished my master's. I want to say I stayed on for another 6 months just to finish out the school year, and the FUTURES Tour was halfway through, which was fine. So I was able to go and play 6 months, retain my card, and then I'd say kind of start my full serious year. Gave professional golf a good try. I think in all it ended up to be 4 or 5 years. So I was lucky because, let's say that ran March to October. We then had an Australian tour. So I was able to play in Australia. Back then we had maybe 3 major Australian events. So the likes of Kari Webb, Annika, they would come down to Australia and play. But soon, towards the end, just glimpses are good, didn't have the consistency, but I felt like I gave it a good shot. So that, basically led into caddying after that.
Sure. U.S. Open right around the corner, the women in Pennsylvania, the men down here in Pinehurst. What makes that event so incredible?
Probably first of all is some of the golf courses we get to play. Last year we're out at Pebble Beach, we're at Lancaster Country Club. They were there in 2015. I wasn't a part of that championship, but I've since been to Lancaster. I've seen a couple of the holes, and I think it's going to be a true championship golf course. The men are back in Pinehurst in about 4 weeks' time. Great golf course. Played on number 2, caddied on number 2. It's probably the hardest setup golf that we play all year. So to have basically at the end a true champion, that's the kind of golf, I like to play, see, and be a part of even as a caddy. So, Lancaster is going to be a true test. It's narrow, or the fairways are narrow, rough is going to be up. I'm headed up there a few days early. The scores will just depend on whether they've had rain, whether the greens are firm or not. That I don't know about just yet, but everything else says that, possibly 3-4 under par could win it.
And the Open is so incredible because the title is true. If you have a handicap of a certain level, you can play in a local qualifier and then move on through, which is remarkable. I think I read somewhere on the men's side this year there were 10,000 people who signed up for local qualifying, and that whittles down to a 156 player field. Tell us about your experience, Kylie, qualifying for the Women's Open in 2004.
Yeah, that was up in Massachusetts. I believe Meg Mallon won that year. So I'd played golf a couple of years on the ASUN, and then just like everyone applied, went through local qualifying. Obviously, local qualifying, they maybe let 10 through. So we picked sites where basically there was Futures Tour sites. So instead of maybe 2 or 3 getting through local qualifying, because we had a strength of field, the USGA does certain calculations. So let's say 10 advance. So I was one of those 10. Picked the sectional, and I want to say I'd played the first 18 really well. So they might have been 4 spots. Pretty nervous going into the second 18. And for some reason, there was like a leaderboard, so I could see the scores and I was leading. And then the next best person was maybe 3 or 4 behind. So I kind of knew if I held it together, there's a very good chance that I could be playing. And yeah, nerves settled in, but you try and go back to your routine, try and just do all the right things and finish medalist. So it was pretty cool to get to go to the US Women's Open and, you know, to see how good the best are. And yeah, the best are the best. I didn't have a very good championship, and that's fine because the experience I got from that was, unbelievable. The course was the hardest I'd played on. You know, normally we would hit, say, 6 irons, 7 irons into par 3s. I was hitting a rescue. I'd never hit rescues into par 3s. Some of the par 4s, it was driver 3-wood. And I'm probably above average length. So it had nothing to do with, you know, as far as me and how far I hit it. It's just the course was set up that hard. And obviously Meg Mallon took the trophy at the end of the week.
Whether it's the U.S. Open or playing professionally in Australia, you teed it off or teed it up with some of the best players in the world. What's that like for someone who'd not been playing since they were yay high? You know?
Thanks for the prompting, because you're prompting, and then I'm realizing some stories that I haven't told in a very long time. So I was probably once again 3-4 years into pro golf. Spent some time down in Melbourne playing some great golf courses. Had a coach, was working really hard on my game. And then I go out and I finish second in one of our Australian events. The next week, there's 2 Aussie ladies, Karen and Marty Lung, and both very successful in Australia, played LET, LPGA, and they were very good friends with Laura Davies. So I had asked these 2, hey, it'd be great just to play a practice round, get familiar, bigger names, you know, get rid of that nervousness. Because if I'm nervous in a practice round, imagine what I'm going to be like in a tournament round. So they said, yep, Kylie, we've got you organised. We've got a game. And by the way, Laura Davies is our 4th. Now, probably apart from Kari, Laura could be the next most person I would be nervous with in the pairing. And then Laura had these stories of she liked to gamble. So I was pretty nervous, you know, a tour pro, but I hadn't made a lot of money. But I just thought, whatever Laura wants to bet, just back yourself. And this is just like a little team match. Right. But, you know, it could have been $100. It could have been $200. I didn't know. Turns out we were just playing for lunch. So, yep, that's good. Not as nervous now. Now we go to the first tee and we've got to work out who's playing with who. So we spin the tees. Tee points to me. Second one, tee goes up and points to Laura. Laura's my partner. So nervous, you know, tee it up. First thing Laura says is, my nickname back then was Prattles. So the others had told her that, and she goes, right, Prattles, we're going to win this. If not, it's your fault. So she'd kind of put the pressure on early. And I tell you what, for 9 holes, I played like a gun. I think we were 2 up through 9. And then true to Laura's form, Laura just came on the back 9 and played really, really well. And we beat the Lund sisters and they bought us lunch. So it was a pretty cool story in the end. just to keep rambling, keep going. We go to the next event. I make the cut by one. It's our biggest event, the Australian Ladies Masters. Turns out I end up finishing, I think it was tied for third. Make the cut by one. Go out the next day and shoot 65. So now I'm up there. Well, Annika Sorenstam had just shot 65 as well. So we were very close to each other, and we actually missed each other by one tee time.
Wow.
So I couldn't imagine playing with her. Like, I think I would have been too nervous, wouldn't have played as well. But she was just one tee time away from me. So, like, I'm still looking around going, okay, well, Annika's right there. Yeah, go out and shoot 67, finish tied for third, was the leading Australian at that tournament. And then that led us into the Australian Open the next week. But just, if it wasn't for the Lund sisters setting me up with Laura Davies, being somewhat comfortable as you can in those situations. But it's just the experiences and, the knowledge you gain from that. Okay, I was nervous in that. I'm nervous in this. You got to put yourself in those positions. Whether you succeed or fail, it just takes time. So I was forever thankful for the Lund sisters for setting me up, with that pairing or practice round pairing.
Wow. The casual golf fan flips on the TV a few times a year. They see people walking, they see the big crowds. They see people walking up 18 and, hitting great shots and hitting in the middle all the time and coming in and a lot of birdie putts. What are some of the things that most people have no idea about being a golf professional?
Probably the decision making. There's a lot of times when, and playing the last couple of days, and I got to play with a teammate's son. So I was trying to offer him like a little bit of advice and when you should hit certain shots or when you should go for it or even when you should lay up, because that gives you the best chance of making a birdie or a par. So we're playing a couple of holes at Keith Hills yesterday. And I mean, we all just want to stand up there and hit driver, but it's actually having the discipline to hit the rescue or the 3-wood off the tee, because it brings nothing into trouble. Your center, you might hit one club longer into the green, but it's creating more birdie chances. So I would say that people don't realize, I think, the discipline sometimes to step back and use the knowledge you have with the course management.
Sure. In 2006, you decided to switch your career path from player to caddie. Tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, so I was playing. I'd gone to qualifying school, didn't qualify, and basically getting ready to go home to get a real job. So there was another Australian, Lindsay Wright, and we had the same coach. She had gone up to the LPGA, but the previous year, same coach, we were traveling together. So she had fired her caddy at the time and was basically just looking for someone to fill in. I said, oh, well, I'm going home to Australia. I can fill in. So the short answer is a 6-week fill-in turned into maybe 12 years at the time. So it was just kind of luck or how it happened. I wasn't the best caddy back then. I knew golf and I'm not going to get you a penalty and I can keep you calm and offer, just some golf advice or different reads. But there are a few caddy nuances that you need to know. We get to use lasers now, but back then we couldn't use lasers on the LPGA. So simple things like having extra yardages that weren't on the yardage book. Was fortunate enough to, spend a couple of practice rounds walking around with Kari Webb's caddy at the time, and some of the more experienced caddies kind of showed me the ropes. But once again, asking the right questions, spending time with people who are more experienced, getting different opinions. Yeah, so I kind of fell into it, and it wasn't my golf. I wasn't struggling. So no matter how they do, I still got paid a wage. But I was still traveling the world and was still involved in golf, which I've always loved.
Finding Camel Club empowers student athletes to lead with purpose on and off the field. Over the past 3 years, donations to the FCC have helped fund scholarships, facility enhancements, health and wellness improvements, and the greatest needs of the athletics department. With our move to the CAA, the need for your support has never been greater. Memberships begin at just $100 and can get you access to exclusive merchandise and seating. Head to GoCamels.com and hit the Give button.
Kylie, what's it about caddying that keeps you coming back now, even in your second decade of doing it on the LPGA Tour?
Yeah, so I spoke to someone recently about this, and I think I'm a teacher who never taught, but I like helping people. And I feel like in any job, I'll take on that job or that opportunity if I feel like I can help. So I've had some very successful relationships with caddying. I've caddied for Hee Young Park. I worked for her for 6 years. So sometimes it's maybe an assistant preempting the boss. You know they're having a bad day. You know when to give them coffee. You know when to give them their space and step away. So spending a lot of time with someone and Hee Young and knowing golf, like I knew what she was going to do before she did it. Or making the suggestion of, let's go out sideways because I've never seen you hit that shot in 6 years. Ultimately, it's her decision. Mm-hmm. And I think one time she overruled me, but then she took it on more of a challenge, which, at the end of it, they were like, right, show me you can do it. So I turned it into a challenge rather than I don't agree with you. But that's when you know someone well enough to, give them the challenge. But it's been nice to help and offer advice. And I'm currently working for a rookie on the LPGA, Jin Hee Im. She's from Korea. While she's a rookie, she did win 4 times in Korea last year, so she can certainly play. But because I've worked for a few Asian golfers before, and her English is probably, I'll say 50-50. The golf is fine. But sometimes when we have complex discussions, we've just got to really pick one or two important aspects of as long as you carry it 150 and keep it below the tree. So these girls are good before I even came along. And that's my philosophy. I just want to assist and help. So we'll still use their natural instincts, but we're just offering advice. So there's more win than what you think. Or, whether you can be short or long. Okay, well, it's better to be short. Okay, we'll take 1 club less. So it's just minimizing damages sometimes, but ultimately creating more birdie opportunities.
Kylie, what does a typical week look like on tour for a caddy?
A very busy week. I'll head up to Lancaster. They've opened the golf course for the golfers the Saturday prior. So we'll play Saturday, Sunday. I'm sure my golfer, and this is on what she feels like she needs to work on, but I think we'll be touching the golf course every day, minimum 9 holes. It's a very difficult golf course, so learning, and we can talk about this in practice rounds, where to miss the ball. We don't word it that way when we play. We would word it more like, okay, we need to keep it right half of the fairway. But during the practice rounds, we're just hitting it from different locations. I've been fortunate enough to source the pins. So I have the everyday hole locations from 2015. So I'll actually throw out discs or hole locations of where it'll be. So we'll never putt to a flag that's in the ground. We'll putt to one of the 4 pin locations that I set out for her. Hit different chips from different areas. Normally, I would go walk the golf course before my player even plays. Just so happens Lancaster has closed the club until 12 o'clock on Saturday. So I'm not able to go and walk the course, which is okay. We'll establish targets ourselves, and then I will go and maybe edit them, reassess based on what happens. So US Open is different. There's no Pro-Am. So we'll have official practice rounds Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My golfer likes to practice a lot, which is okay because it's all quality practice. So she'll go through the long game, the short game, the putting, play 9 holes. We're likely at the golf course 6-7 hours a day, actually on course. And then the tournament starts up on Thursday, finish on Sunday. Turns out our next event is in Atlantic City, so I'll probably head over to Atlantic City straight on Sunday night and then start the process again. Walk the golf course Monday. She'll come in for a practice round Tuesday, Pro-Am Wednesday. So literally if we have 3-4 weeks on the road and we're making the cut, it's almost what feels like 24/7. It just continues.
How about a typical routine on competition day? I know it depends on if you have a early or later tee time, but what is that?
Correct. Depends early, late, and it depends on the individual golfer.
Mm-hmm.
My golfer likes to do a 1 hour and 50-minute warm-up, which is actually quite long. So she will want to hit balls first, which is typically about an hour. Sometimes it takes us a little time to get from the driving range to the chipping putting area. So once again, that time is calculated in there. She will then putt for probably 40-50 minutes. And then just before she goes and tees off, she'll hit a few chips and bunker shots. When I was playing, my warm-up was an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like to putt first, hit balls, so that when I was finished hitting balls, it was only about 10 minutes before I was hitting my first tee shot. But that just varies golfer to golfer.
I remember the first time I was able to travel with the team for an entire regional, and it was 2017 in Albuquerque. And Nadine White was a senior that year, and she ended up qualifying for nationals out of there. But people ask me, oh, how was Albuquerque and this? And Albuquerque's kind of cool. But what struck me most about that trip was walking with the team during the practice round. And when you said throwing out the discs, I had never even considered this. And Coach Crooks had coached at that course several times with both the men and the women. And he's saying, okay, now you need to hit some balls from down here on around the green. You're not always going to hit this green, or it's going to roll off here. And he's sharing those kind of things that I would encourage. If you're a golf fan and you want to see some of the things that are going to help you understand an event, if you're watching live or on TV, is try to get out there the practice rounds and then try to lean in and hear some things. I, of course, it was walking side by side with them and was able to hear that. It was mind-blowing and revealing to me how much knowledge I gained just from that, 4 or 5 hours or 4 hours, or whatever it was on the course with the team that day, that I apply now to watching an event.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the fundamentals, is those practice rounds and the knowledge of where to be and simple where not to be. If there's a tucked back pin, obviously it's better to have a shorter miss, because then you've got plenty of green to work with. But you know what? Maybe hit 1 or 2 from over the back. Now, don't spend all day there, because the likelihood of you being there is only about 5%. It's more important to hit from these other areas. So for those of you who might be fortunate enough to go out to Pinehurst and watch the men, being on the back of the range, and if you're close enough and you can hear what the caddy and the players are discussing, even if it's on the range, you'll see them hit certain shots. Or even if it was their warm-up before, some of the caddies know the yardages. So whatever that first par 3 is at Pinehurst number 2, the caddy knows that it's possibly 180 and it's a tucked back left pin. Well, what that means is, okay, maybe we'll hit a little draw in there. So you'll actually see them practice some of the shots that will happen on course later. So instead of just standing up there and, okay, I think that what it is, or discussing it, you've actually done it before, which takes a lot of pressure off. So we're able to do a few of those things even for tournament day practice. But yeah, ultimately knowing the golf course as best you possibly can. PGA and LPGA go back to the same events year after year, traditionally. But the US Open, I mean, is it been 10 years since the men have been back to Pinehurst?
Right.
Certainly 10 for Lancaster.
Right.
And there's probably only a handful in the field that were actually in Lancaster 10 years ago. So that's why the Opens are a little bit harder, and it's a lot more preparation work for us as caddies and as players.
You and former Campbell men's golfer Dwayne Bach are among 21 caddies on the LPGA and PGA Tours who are part of this Yeti Caddy program in the Caddy Network. Can you tell us a little bit about Yeti Caddies and what that's involved in?
That came about just at the start of this year, and I actually got to meet Dwayne for the first time. I'd heard so many stories about him at a Campbell alumni get-together. I think I was here 2 or 3 years ago. So I got to have a nice chat to him when he was working for Kevin Kisner at the time. So I'm a part of the LPGA Caddy Association. So ours is called the PLTCA, and I'm actually a board member, one of 7. So I believe in the greater good, helping the caddies, promoting ourselves, and I believe the men's is called APTC, Association of Professional Tour Caddies. And some of our ex-LPGA caddies are now caddying on the PGA Tour, and a couple of them are board members. So we've been talking to each other about just caddies in general, helping, liaise with our, obviously, governing bodies, the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour. But yeah, one of the caddies there was a Yeti competition, and he loves Yeti, and I love Yeti too. I've been using Yetis for a couple of years. And he actually won this competition, got one of the big coolers, and was speaking to the Caddy Network. And the Caddy Network is involved with the Men's Tour Association. So they went, oh, this is great. This is caddies. Caddies use coolers all the time, and they were looking at a different angle and thought, oh, we'll sponsor some caddies. So they sponsor 15 on the men's tour, and then they wanted to sponsor 5 on the ladies' tour, but they actually wanted to sponsor 5 females. So they've approached me to, give them names. Obviously, as a board member and being out there a long time, I've got all the contact details. I offered them up the caddies who they worked for. So we actually turned 5 female caddies into what turned into 4 female caddies and 2 male caddies. So they were able to get number 2 in the world, Lilia Vu's caddy Cole, and then myself and 2 other females wear the Yeti cap. There's a lot of sponsorships out there or sponsorship companies, but this is one that I truly love and feel proud wearing and supporting. I've got my cup of coffee here today, and it's in a Yeti drinkware. I fish a lot in Australia, so I've got a Yeti cooler. It's just great for some of those companies to, support us in what we do.
You mentioned the life, especially in the tour season, 24/7. When you do have some free time, Kylie, how do you like to spend it?
I love fishing. So I got to spend 3 months at home in Australia. And I don't spoil myself a lot, but I actually just bought a Sea-Doo Fish Pro. So it's a Sea-Doo jet ski with a specific or tailored towards fishing. Now, when I go home to Australia, I'm actually in my hometown. So earlier conversations, we had a beach house. Mum and Dad would take us out to the islands. So literally this Christmas, I was fishing in my backyard, areas that I hadn't been to since I was a teenager. All the local friends thought I was crazy because it literally is 10 to 15 nautical miles offshore. But I'm a safety person, and I'm traveling with 2 or 3 other people with Sea-Doo. So, safety in numbers, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Are you a light tackle person, heavy tackle, fly casting? What do you
Yeah,
fish?
so I grew up more with a line, so a hand line, and Dad was big with just live bait, squid, and we call them prawns, you call them shrimp. But I've moved into more of the lures. I had a bit of a gap between, fishing with live bait and lures, but I'm learning a lot more. I've got a 5,000 reel. I think it's a Daiwa at the moment. Luckily, the Sea-Doo's all set up. You can have rod holders. But, yeah, learning more about it. I was just the old nylon line, and this is a few years ago. Now it's all braid, and you know what? I just love it. Any day on the water is a good day. So to be able to not only fish off it, but I'm up near the Whitsunday Islands, which is kind of our holiday destination like you would have with Hawaii. So this Christmas, I've got quite a few friends who are coming up, and I can just forget about the fishing side of it and then just take them out visiting these islands, some of the whitest sand in the world, just as a normal jet ski.
When you fish, is it sport fishing, or do you fish and prepare it and eat it, or how?
Yeah, I only go fishing to catch something for dinner. So that is the main goal, unless I'm just out there socially having fun. But if there is, rods and a cooler on the back, I'm there to catch something, take it home. So my first outing out, I caught a squid. So I'd never caught a squid before. So luckily I'd watched a few YouTube channels. So I knew how to, as they say, dispatch of the squid. But yeah, caught the fish. I've been doing that for years. So, fillet it up, and then, visited Mum, and we did some crumb fish and calamari.
Kylie, it's hard to believe it's been almost 9 years ago, but you and Brad Fritsch went into the Hall of Fame along with Bill Young in 2015. What does it mean to you to be regarded among the best ever to come through these doors and to be inducted into the Campbell Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it's certainly an honor. It's something I never thought I would achieve. I've always looked forward at things, so it was kind of nice to take the time and I guess look backwards. Brad and I were on the team at the same time. Two completely different careers in terms of, I'd like to say that I had a lot of success as a college athlete. Brad, probably not so much. But then, what Brad did making the PGA Tour, obviously, I think at the time, Corn Ferry, then got up onto the PGA Tour. He, by far, had, a much better successful professional career than I did. But to see him have success, and to share that, I guess, at the same time with two golf team members, that was pretty special.
I always like to wrap up when I interview golfers with a few of these general golfing type, quick hitting questions. Who makes up your ideal foursome, including you? So, and you can make it a 5 if you have to.
Just for golf and idol wise, I'd probably have to say Kari Webb. Playing with her, sticking with the theme of LPGA, Annika. And then more recently, and I've been paired with her, is Nelly Korda. Her game right now is pretty special. She won 5 in a row, I think had another top 5, and then just had her 6th win last week. So without too in-depth, I think that would make up a pretty good foursome.
What's the most difficult course you've played?
Probably early on, and hadn't played too much on the links, is actually probably Pinehurst number 2. It has that linksy feel to it, but I'd never experienced a green. Now, I don't know if it's the first or second hole, but literally you can hit middle of the green and it run off. So that was just like challenging straight away. Actually, we're headed back to, I'll throw it in, we're headed back to St. Andrews this year. For the Women's British Open, and I'm pretty excited to go back to the home of golf. Just, if it's a calm day, it's the easiest golf course you'll ever play. When it's not, oh my goodness, just hold on and try and hit fairways and greens.
How about your favorite course?
My favorite course, I'll stay over in that region in the United Kingdom area, and Royal Lytham and St. Anne's. It's not an overly long course, but you've got to be accurate. A lot of like bunkering. It still is linksy, but it's playable. Everything's in front of you. So I'd have to say that course.
Favorite club?
For some reason, it was always like a 7-iron. I don't know why. I'm a very good putter, love my putter, but I'd have to say 7-iron.
And then best piece of golfing advice that you've ever been given?
Golfing advice. I'm not actually sure about that one. I just revert back to mine of if you're going to do something, do it properly. That's held really well for golf and all aspects of life.
Finally, Kylie, can you put into words how Campbell University and the Buies Creek community have impacted your life?
Yeah, it's impacted me a lot. I wouldn't be in this position I'm in today or have had some of the opportunities I've had without, coming to Campbell. So, whether it was learning to play, giving the professional golf career a chance, or even becoming an assistant coach and then learning all that detailed work. I was actually trying to get in contact with the head of exercise science, Dr. Woolard. Just turns out that she was away on holiday. So I actually do keep in contact with a lot of people here at Campbell. Sometimes it's a year or two in between visits. But yeah, it certainly holds a very special place, and you can be successful wherever you want to go. And I'm glad I ended up at Campbell all those years ago.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been Campbell Hall of Fame member and current LPGA Tour caddy Kylie Pratt. Thank you, Kylie, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
Thanks, Dan. It's been a pleasure to be here.